Good morning, everyone. This is the case of the people of the state of Colorado versus James Egan Holmes, case number 12CR 1522. The record should reflect that Mr. Holmes is present with his attorneys, Ms. Brady, Mr. King, Ms. Higgs, Ms. Nelson, and Ms. Spengler. And the people are represented by Mr. Brockler, Mr. Orman, Ms. Pearson, Ms. Stitch McGuire, Mr. Edson, and Mr. Edwards. We are outside the presence of the jury. We have a letter from juror number 118, and I have marked it, or we're going to mark it as C-TR-119. It reads as follows. Sir, I would respectfully like to ask if you know what the schedule is for the rest of the week, this week and next. My son graduates this Friday, August 7 at the Fort Bragg in North Carolina, and I have a plane ticket to fly back there with my family on Thursday, August 6th. I bought this ticket just in case these proceedings were over by then or we happened to have a break. It looks like we might, since Mr. Brockler said he would probably be done today, Wednesday, August 5, and you said you hope to have this to the jury by next week. Well, they're paying attention. That was my comment. The rest of the letter reads as follows. This leads me to believe that we might have off Thursday and Friday as we did before the first deliberations. Right now, my ticket is for noon, Thursday, August 6th. I would like to know if I can make that or need to try to change it to later Thursday or cancel it altogether. Would you please let me know, if you know, what the schedule is for the rest of this week and next? Thank you respectfully. And then it is signed and then indicated next to the signature is Juror 118. Would you please mark it? So that's a good segue to talk about scheduling. So, Mr. Brockler? Yes. Yes. I'm going to bring in juror number 118, okay? Let's bring in juror 118, please. The record should reflect that juror number 118 is now present in the courtroom. Good morning.
Good morning.
I received your letter. Thank you for the letter. Thanks for letting me know about this. I wish you had let me know about it in advance so we could have planned ahead. Unfortunately, we're at a point in the proceedings where we're planning to work tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday as well. If you had told us in advance, we could have planned in advance and we would have worked with you, but this is sort of last minute that we're being told about this. We have planned a Friday off next week, as you know, and we took last Friday off, and we've had basically every other Friday off. And when jurors have given me enough notice, I'm able to plan ahead and maybe move the schedule around a little bit if I need to, but with this late notice, I can't do that.
Can I interject? I sent 3 emails explaining this. I sent them all through this trial as soon as I had this date, and I never got a response back.
Okay, so you were sending emails?
Yes.
All right. Were you sending the emails to the email address that was provided when
Yes.
When we were selecting a jury?
Yes.
Okay. And I don't think anybody was checking that email address anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Okay.
I was sending those as soon as I found the date. I sent the email saying this is the date.
All right. Let me check the emails. We'll try to see if we can retrieve the
Well, I
emails.
mean, if you can't do it, you can't do it. I understand.
Well, we'll try to retrieve them and I'll review them, and if it changes my mind, I'll let you know, okay?
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
The record should reflect that juror number 118 has now exited the courtroom. That may explain why she never told us. She thought she was telling us, but apparently was sending the messages to that email address that has not been in use throughout the trial. So we'll try to retrieve them, and if we get them, I'll review them, and then we'll go from there. Are the parties ready for the jury at this time?
Yes, sir.
Is the defense ready? All right, let's bring the jury in, please. Please be seated, everyone. Good morning, folks. Everybody doing all right? Okay. Good to have you back. Thank you. All right, Ms. Tish McGuire, call your next witness, please.
Sierra Cowden.
Good morning. Can I have you raise your right hand for me so that I can administer an oath? Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please be seated. Could you please tell us your full name and spell your first, middle, and last names?
Sierra Camille Cowden, Sierra Cierra, Camille Camille, Cowden, Cowden.
Ms. Teach McGuire, you may proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, Miss Cowden. How old are you, Sierra?
19?
Are you in school?
Yes.
Where do you go to school?
CU Boulder.
Who is Gordon Cowden to you?
My dad.
If I could please have a photograph that's been previously introduced, 4716. Could you please tell a jury who that is?
That's my dad, Gordon Cowden.
Thank you very much. Where was your dad born?
Waco, Texas.
What are the names of your dad's parents?
George Cowden and Molly Cowden, but she used to be Molly Waldrop.
And did your dad have any brothers or sisters?
Yes, yes. 3. George Cowden, Graves Cowden, and his sister Galen Kendall. Used to be Galen Cowden.
Where does that part of the family live?
Texas.
And is your grandfather and your uncle here today?
Yeah.
Where did your dad end up growing up after he was born?
Some in Waco, Dallas, Austin, just in Texas.
Did your dad go to college?
Yes.
Do you know what college he went to?
He went to Baylor University for a year, then he went and he graduated from Howard Payne University in 1984.
Do you know what he studied?
He got a general business degree with a minor in history.
Was your dad kind of a World War II buff growing up? Did he make you and the kids, your brothers and sisters, talk about World War II all the time?
Mostly we just listened to him.
And if you could pull the microphone a little bit closer to you, Sierra, sorry, thanks. If you could just kind of, it's almost like you have to be touching it. Did your dad play any sports in college?
Yeah, he played on a basketball team called the Rejects, and he played like some badminton and racquetball.
Your dad wasn't the tallest basketball
No,
player.
he was pretty little, but he was really good at it for kind of a littler guy.
What did your dad do after he graduated from college?
He lived in Austin. He became a real estate appraiser.
And did your dad end up getting married?
Yes.
Who did your dad marry?
At the time she was Melissa Rouse, but then she became Melissa Cowden.
Is that your mom?
Mm-hmm.
Did your dad have any children?
Yes.
Obviously, other than you.
Yes, he had
How many other children did he have?
3 other kids besides me. My oldest sister, Christian Cowden, who's 24 now. My brother, Weston Cowden, who's 23. Sorry. My sister, Brooke Cowden, who's 20.
Where do all your siblings live now?
Brooke and I still live in Colorado. Weston lived in Kings Point, New York for a while, but he's back home now and he's going to be going to the Army soon, so he'll have to go to Missouri for training. And my oldest sister, Christian, is in Guatemala serving in the Peace Corps.
Are you and your brothers and sisters close?
Yes.
Where did you and your brother and sisters grow up?
All of us were born in Texas, and we lived there till I was like 4 or 5, but for me, mostly I grew up in Colorado, in Denver, and Aurora.
Did your parents eventually divorce?
Yes.
How much time did you spend with your mother and how much time did you spend with your father?
Like legally it was split, so that I was with my dad 40% of the time and my mom 60% of the time, but a lot of times it just worked out that it was kind of 50-50 between them.
Did you have a family pet when you lived with your dad?
Yes. We had a yellow lab named Shula.
Your Honor, if I may approach the witness with what's been marked as People's Exhibits 4715 and 4714.
You may.
Ms. Cowden, do you recognize the people in this photograph?
Yes.
Do they fairly and accurately represent your family?
Yes.
All right, this time I'd move forward to admit People's Exhibit 4714 and 4715.
Any objection?
Nothing further.
All right, based on my previous rulings, P-TR-474715 are admitted and may be published.
Thanks. If I could please have 4715? Could you please tell the jury who everyone in those photographs are?
To the left of my dad is me holding Ditto, and then to the right is my sister Brooke, then Christian, then Weston.
Who's next to you?
My dad. My dad's in the middle there.
And who's Ditto to the family?
Ditto was the guide dog that me and Brooke raised, trained.
And if I could please have 4714. All right, and who's in this photograph with your dad?
That's my dad with Chula, our dog.
Did you and your family have a special game that you guys played with your dad and Chula?
Yeah, we would play hide and seek, and like Chula was always just like enamored by her dad. Like she just loved him so much. When we played hide and seek, we'd just let her run off and find him, and she would just get to him right away, give him away.
Is Chula still with the family?
No, she died years ago.
Is that the only time you ever saw your father cry?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Did you have special road trips that you took with your dad?
Yeah, we went on a lot of... Sorry. We drove down to Austin a lot.
And who were you going to visit when you drove down to Austin?
Like our grandparents and the rest of our external family.
Did you take any trips any other places in the country?
Sorry.
Oh, take a moment. There's some water up there if you need it.
Yeah, like we drove up to New York, and like the trips to Texas, we would go a lot, like in the summer and around Christmas.
Can you tell the jury a little bit about your dad's personality and character?
Very like funny, charming, patient, kind, honest.
Was there...
Sorry.
Was there a time that you played a family game called Drowning that kind of demonstrates a little bit about your dad's
Yeah.
caringness?
When we lived at the Breaker Apartments in Denver, there was like this little community pool, and my siblings and I would play this stupid game where one of us would pretend to drown and someone had to be the lifeguard and had to like jump in and save them. And like my sister Christian and I were playing, and the way Brooke recalls it is that we like weren't really including her in the game, so she just went ahead and like floated in the water and pretended that she had drowned. And my dad was barbecuing our dinner for us, and he looked up and thought that she had like actually drowned, so like he screamed her name and jumped the entire length of the pool, and without like taking off his like nice leather shoes and jeans, he just like jumped in to save her. And like she just looked up and was like, "Dad?" Like she was just playing. And then like after that, Brooke was like very like embarrassed and upset with herself. And my dad like got out and jumped back in again to make her feel better and just swam around with us in his clothes.
So we spent the rest of the evening with
Yeah.
you swimming in his clothes.
Yeah.
Was there a time that you guys were driving and you came across some prairie dogs?
Yeah. I think...
Your Honor, I'm sorry, excuse me. Can we approach, please?
Yes. Ms. Tish McGuire, you may proceed.
Thank you. Was there a time that you guys were driving with your dad in a car and you came across a prairie dog that helps demonstrate to the jury the caring nature of your father towards you and your sisters?
Yes, my sister Brooke and I were in the car with our dad. I think we were driving like either to the park or to dinner, and we pulled up at a red light. There were like one or two cars in front of us, and our dad noticed like a little prairie dog on the sidewalk, and he was kind of going into the street. My dad was like, "Oh my gosh, the prairie dog's gonna get hit by a car," and so he like put the car in park and jumped out and ran around and like herded it back towards, away from the cars, I mean, and like I think he didn't want it to get hit by the car, but he also didn't want us to like get upset about seeing a prairie dog hit by a car.
What kind of father was your dad to you and the kids?
Like loving, dedicated, patient.
How did your dad wake you up every morning?
He'd go diddly diddly diddly, and he'd like come in making that sound. And, like, I know I'd like used to kind of dread that sound, but I'd like to hear it now.
Did you have dinner together every night as a family?
Yeah.
What was your dad's favorite thing to cook for you guys?
He always liked to make us omelets, and like after we would just talk.
So you guys spent a lot of time at the dinner table as a family talking together. Did you guys go to church together?
Yeah. Most Sundays, like we would go out to breakfast first, like at Lamar's Donuts or Panera Bread, and then he would take us to church.
Did he love taking you to In-N-Out Burger?
Yeah, when we went to California and got to go to Disneyland, we were all very excited about going to In-N-Out Burger, and it was like a big deal. I think my sister Brooke and my dad, they both bought In-N-Out Burger shirts, and they came up with this little song about how we're like the In-N-Out Burger family.
Did your dad have a way of trying to make you guys help around the house?
Yeah, he had a Happy Helper song. He'd say, "We call them happy helpers because they love to help," and we'd all like groan, but like now it makes me laugh.
Was your dad the kind of dad that sat on the sidelines when you kids were playing, or was he playing with you all the time?
Oh, he played with us all the time, like, and he took us to the park a lot. Like, he took us outside a lot, and we would play like the lava game and Jackpot 500 and tag and all sorts of games. And like my dad would play with us, and all these other kids at the park who we didn't even know would want to play too.
Was your dad supportive of your activities in school?
Yeah, like my brother did swim all throughout high school, and my dad was like always there.
When was the only time you ever saw your dad get frustrated?
Like if there was traffic and he was trying to get like to Weston swim meets or to like pick me up from school or to like be there for one of us, he would get upset. But I mean, he wouldn't get upset at us. He'd just get upset at the traffic because he wanted to be there.
Did you enjoy walks with your father?
Sometimes, like I always really like going for walks, and sometimes he would let me go, and then like I would think I was walking alone, and I'd look back, and he'd like he'd be following me.
Just checking up on you to make sure you were okay.
Yeah, but he'd like catch up to me and walk with me then. But
did your dad always want to make sure that all of you were included in the same activities together?
I mean, yeah, he wanted all of us to be like involved and stuff, but we were allowed to do the things that we were interested in. We didn't all have to just have the same passions.
Was there a time where you were going to get left out at Elitch's and your dad made sure that you were included?
Your Honor, can we approach, please?
Yes. McGuire, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. What did your dad like to do in his spare time?
He liked to travel. He liked to like barbecue or grill food. He liked to read and hike and go for walks.
Was he a fan of any Texas sports teams that we probably shouldn't talk about?
Dallas Cowboys.
Your Honor, if I may approach the witness with what's been marked as People's Exhibit 1098.
Yes.
Ms. Cowen, do you recognize that disc?
Yes.
Do you see your name and initials on it?
Yes.
What is that? What does that disc contain?
It's photos of my dad with family, like with his siblings, some with us, with his parents.
And does it fairly and accurately represent some moments of your dad's life?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time I would move for the admittance of 1098.
No further objection.
Right, based on my previous ruling, P-TR-1098 is admitted, and I'm specifically referring to Order C-204, and the exhibit may be published.
Thank you. If I could please have 1098. Thank you. Ms. Cowden, I now want to talk to you about July 19th and 20th of 2012. How old were you on July 19th of 2012?
I'm 16.
How old was your sister Brooke?
17.
Tell me about what you remember about the day of July 19th.
I remember that Brooke and Dad, they went to the park, and when they came back, like we had talked about going to see a movie that night, and my dad joked that he had gotten us tickets to Brave. Was this Disney movie? That's how.
Did you want to see the Disney movie?
No, at the time.
What movie did you want to see?
The Batman movie.
Did you go to the Batman movie that night with your dad?
Yes.
What is the last memory you have of your father in that theater?
I mean, besides waking him up, like trying to wake him up. Like before that, when the shooting started, like he started to get up and he started to move forward, but then he hesitated and turned to make sure that we were coming to. And like before that, during the commercials, I remember that he like insisted on me taking the extra armrest that was in between us. 'Cause he was to the left of me, and like he had his arm up, and without thinking about it, I kind of put my arm up and bumped him, and I was like, oh. But then he like put my elbow up because he wanted me to have the armrest. And like also during the commercials, there was one Superman commercial. Sorry. There was a Superman commercial, and it was like a theater of superhero fans, so everyone started cheering, and we like looked at each other in the dark and kind of just laughed, just at how like excited everyone was.
Where did you go after you left the theater that night?
They took us to Gateway High School. They like brought around some RTDs, and they took us to Gateway.
Did you know for certain when you were at Gateway High School what had happened to your father?
We weren't certain, but like in the theater when I touched him, like I thought immediately that he was dead. Sorry.
Did you leave Gateway High School and then go to your dad's house?
Yeah, I just remember we kept using people's phones to try to call our dad, and it just kept going to voicemail, and we tried to call our mom, even though it was like our dad's night to take us, and we couldn't get in touch with her. And so a policeman drove us to our dad's house, and our dad had the keys, so the policeman had to do the lock on the door and had to get us in. And I remember my Aunt Caitlin, sorry. She had heard about what had happened on the news. She didn't know the details. She just heard that there had been a shooting in Aurora close to where we lived. And she called to ask if it was true and to check that everyone was okay. And I don't think Brooke was the one talking to her on the phone, but I don't think she was scared when she called, because she was just wanting to check up. I think she thought it was all okay. And my sister had to tell her that her dad didn't run out with us, and I could just hear her start to cry on the phone. And then when our mom got there, it was she was just crying so hard, it was she couldn't breathe. It was just she was hysterical almost. And she was just calling all these hospitals.
Were you eventually officially notified that your father was murdered?
Yeah, at Gateway, I guess it was all the 12 families and groups of friends were in this big room, and my mom's at the time boyfriend, who's now husband, he asked if our missing people, if they're not on the list of injured people, does it mean that they're gone? And the chief of police said, like, yes. And I just remember, like, there was just this complete uproar of people crying, and, like, I think I remember someone even screaming.
Did you have two separate funerals for your dad?
Yeah, we had a memorial service in Colorado, and then we had a funeral in Austin, Texas.
What was the toughest thing about the funeral in Austin for you?
It's for me, the hardest thing was just, like, putting my hand on his coffin.
Your Honor, can we approach, please?
Yes. All right, Ms. Stitch McGuire, you may proceed.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Ms. Cowden, can you please tell the jury about the impact of your dad's murder on your brothers and sisters?
Like, I don't really know even where to begin. It's like, I feel like in a way it's like we're closer now, but it's like we're all so farther away from each other now. And like, I just feel like my family's broken.
Can you tell the jury about the impact of your dad's murder on you?
I mean, like I'm a mess up here.
What do you miss most about your dad?
I'm just everything. I miss like him telling stories and like making everyone laugh and like his patience. Like he was always patient with us even when we weren't patient with each other. And like it's selfish to say, but like I just miss him being my dad. And it was like he was just so present in our lives that like growing up, the idea of one of my parents dying, it wasn't ever something that I ever even considered because they were so present. Like I just miss him being there.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cowden. I have no further questions.
Ms. Brady, do you have any questions?
I don't, thank you.
And the jury does not appear to have any questions. Ms. Cowden, thank you. May she be released from her subpoena?
Please, thank you, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. Call your next witness, please.
Jerry Jackson, Your Honor.
Come around this way, please. Good morning. Can I have you raise your right hand, please, so that I can administer an oath? Do you solemnly swear or affirm, under penalty of law, that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Seated. Thank you. Brianna, on the table, please. Could you please tell us your full name and spell your first, middle, and last names?
Jerry Susan Jackson, Jerri Susan Jackson.
Mr. Orman, you may proceed.
Thank you. If we could please have Exhibit 4704 up on the viewer. It's been previously admitted. Who is that?
That is my son, Matthew
What's his last name?
McQuinn.
Thank you. We can take that down, ma'am. In that photograph, there's some sunglasses on his head. Is there a story associated with the sunglasses on the head that shows us something about your son's personality?
He would always wear his sunglasses on the top of his head and call it his man tiara.
Is that something about his sense of humor?
Yes.
Tell me about your son. Tell me about who he was as a man.
He was a very caring person. He loved life and he loved it to the fullest. He liked to, if he saw somebody having a bad day, he would joke around with them in order to lift their spirits. So he was really an encourager.
How old was your son when he was killed?
He was 27 years old.
Now, is he from Aurora, from Colorado, or did he move here?
No, he was born and raised in Springfield, Ohio.
Just so the jury can know where that is. Where is Springfield, Ohio?
It's halfway between Columbus and Dayton.
When did your son move out here to Colorado?
It was in November of 2011.
So how old would he have been then?
26.
Was he involved in a long-term relationship with someone?
Yes, he had dated Samantha Yowler for 3.5 years.
And did the jury already hear from her in this trial?
Yes, she was one of the injured.
Were they living together?
Yes, they were.
And was she from Colorado, or was she also from Ohio?
She was also from Ohio. She was from St. Paris, it's just a little bit north of Springfield.
Do you know why they chose to move out here from Ohio?
Because Samantha's brother Nick was living out here, and they decided that they wanted to change the scenery, wanted to see if they would like it out here before they had any real responsibilities in Ohio.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness with some photographs?
You may.
Ma'am, I'm going to hand you what I've marked for identification as People's Exhibits 4705, 4706, and 4707.
Thank you.
Can you take a look at those?
Yes.
What do they show?
Those are pictures of Matt and Samantha.
Do they show what they look like together and sort of how they related to each other?
Yes.
Your Honor, move to admit 4705, 4706, and 4707.
Any objection?
Nothing further.
Based on my previous rulings, including orders C-204, P-DR-4705 through 4707 inclusive, are admitted and may be published.
If we could please have up 4705. Do you know what this is?
That is a picture of Matt and Samantha in June of 2012. They had come home to Ohio, and they went to Kings Island, and that was taken there.
Now, what's Kings Island?
Kings Island is an amusement park in Cincinnati, Ohio.
4706, please. What are we looking at here?
That's Matt and Samantha, probably about 2010, and that's just a classic Samantha and Matt picture.
And 4707? And how about that?
That was taken in June of 2011, the week that they were home for a wedding, and that was taken at that time.
Thank you. We can have that down now. Thank you, ma'am. Do you know whether or not your son and Miss Yowler planned on remaining in Colorado?
No, Matt was unable to find a full-time job here, and so he was going to be moving home by the end of July 2012.
And Samantha Yowler?
Samantha was going to stay in Colorado and come home in September.
How long had they been involved with each other?
2.5 years.
And were you able to observe their interactions with each other during that time?
Yes, I was. They spent a lot of time at our house and a lot of time at her parents' houses. They loved each other dearly. They would joke around with each other, and if people didn't know better, they'd think that they didn't like each other because they just teased around with each other, and but they had a very loving relationship.
Were you able to see anything about the way that your son treated Miss Yowler that reflected on his character?
Yes, one of the things that he would do when they were still in Springfield, when she would have a dinner break, he would take her dinner, and he would just do anything for her.
Have you been able to see and observe what type of impact the crime has had on Samantha Yowler?
Yes, she has lost her future because they were planning on getting married and having babies. And she took a couple of, probably 3 months before she could go out in public.
You mentioned work, and you mentioned that your son was unable to find full-time employment out here in Colorado. Was he working at all?
Yes, he was working part-time at Target.
Which one?
I believe it was Alameda.
The one like north of the town center of Aurora?
I just know that it was real close to the mall.
What was he doing at Target, do you know?
He was unloading trucks from 4 to 8 in the morning, and then he would pick up extra hours by stocking some shelves.
I would like to ask you now about family relationships, relationships that your son had with family members. And I want to start with his grandparents. Did he grow up with grandparents?
Yes, my parents were still alive, and then his dad's mother.
Who was the most important grandparent in your son's life?
My father.
What was your father's name?
Robert Schaefer.
Can you tell us a little bit about the relationship that your son had with Robert Schaefer?
From the time he was young, they liked to spend time out just outside. They would go to the nearby reservoir and just watch for birds and walk on his property and look at bugs and all that kind of stuff.
I want to ask you about a nickname that your father had for himself and ask you whether or not that shows us anything about the particular impact that this crime had on your father.
My dad proclaimed himself as Mr. Wonderful.
Now, was that meant as a joke?
Yes,
Okay.
It was a conversation starter.
Just explain how that worked as a conversation starter.
Just kind of get people talking and joking around.
And did he use this in a particular context?
He said that he was Mr. Wonderful, and then Matt picked up that he was Mr. Wonderful Jr.
Did your dad and your son use that term, Mr. Wonderful, in any particular venue or forum?
Mostly when they were working together at a camp.
And did your dad have a name tag or anything?
Yes, he had the secretary at church make up a name tag, and he said that since it was on church stationery, it was official.
Where would he wear that name tag? And what did it say?
It just said Mr. Wonderful, and he would wear that as he greeted the doors at church.
Did your dad change what he did about calling himself Mr. Wonderful and wearing that name tag at church after your son was killed?
After Matt was killed, my dad never wore that name tag again. And when someone would come up and say something about Mr. Wonderful, he'd say, "No, we buried Mr. Wonderful in July."
How about brothers and sisters? Did your son have any brothers and sisters?
He had one biological brother and then 4 stepbrothers.
And the biological brother, what was his name? Or
His
is
name was Eric McQuinn.
Can you tell me a little bit about the relationship between your son, Matt, and your son, Eric?
They had a close relationship. They were 2.5 years apart, but just 1 year in school. And they were close, had the same friends, did the same activities. And then once they grew up, Eric went to Cincinnati for school, so they didn't see as much after Eric moved out.
Just so the jury can understand this, how far away is Springfield from Cincinnati, Ohio?
It's about an hour and a half
Drive?
drive time.
Has this crime had an impact on your son, Eric McQuinn?
Yes, he went through a time that he drank more than he should have. But then once a certain amount of time went by, I'd say probably a year or so, he had a whole new outlook and is now focused on keeping his brother's memory alive.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness with what I've marked for identification as People's Exhibit 4701?
Yes.
Thank you.
Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to please take a look at 4701 and tell me what that is.
That's a picture of Matt and Eric and then his stepbrother, Chris Jackson.
And was that taken within a year or so of the crime here?
That was taken on Thanksgiving of 2011, and it's the last picture we have of all three of them together.
Move to admit 4701, Your Honor.
Any objection?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Pursuant to my previous rulings, including Order C-204, P-DR-4701 is admitted and may be published.
Can you please put it up, ma'am? It's 4701. Thank you. Tell us what we're looking at here and who these people are.
On my left is my son Eric, Matt is in the middle, and Chris is on the right.
So one on the right is a stepbrother and the one on the left is his brother.
Correct.
Thank you, ma'am. You can take that down now. We just saw a picture of stepbrother. How many stepbrothers? I think you said 4. Who were they all?
Stephen Jackson, Pat Jackson, Chris Jackson, and David Jackson.
And we're talking about stepbrothers, so how long, when did you get married to their father to create that relationship?
2008.
Now, even though you didn't grow up together, they weren't little kids together, was there a close relationship between your son and any of his stepbrothers?
He was close to the oldest, David, but especially close to Chris.
I want to ask you about the two of them then. Can you describe the relationship between your son and his stepbrother, Chris, and tell us anything about that demonstrates your son's character?
Even though they weren't brought up together, Chris and Matt were just two peas in a pod, and they just loved to laugh, to cut up together. They'd go out, and one time they had a bonfire in February. It had to scoop the snow away. And just, they were just there for each other. When Chris's daughter had to have surgery, Matt came over at midnight for that, and they were just very close.
Did they consider themselves anything other than brothers, not even stepbrothers?
No.
Has this crime had an impact on Chris?
Yes, for the first probably year and a half, he didn't want to talk about it at all. He ended up moving to Texas afterwards with his job. And then, actually he didn't talk about it much until the trial started. And then he was finally able to open up and feel like he had to make sure that Matt was remembered.
You mentioned a stepbrother named David.
Yes.
Tell me about the relationship between your son and his stepbrother David.
They had a good relationship. They would as well do things. A lot of times the three of them, Chris, David, and Matt would get together and, go to a movie or, just hang out.
Has this crime had an impact on Matt's stepbrother, David?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
He just has, he's moved away too. He's now in New Jersey. But he just, he misses him every day. And whenever we're together, he talks about Matt and how he misses him and wishes he was here.
And your husband, what's his name?
David, I'm sorry, he goes by Dave.
Okay. Is it a junior thing? Is Dave Jr.?
No, different middle names.
Well, tell me about the relationship between your son and his stepfather.
To them, it was not a step. It was, even though he still has his father, Dave was more of the father that was there for him, and would do anything for him. They worked on cars together. They, if anything was going on that Matt needed help, besides my dad, Dave would also be there. One night, Matt hit a deer at 12:30, and I was getting up to go to him, and Dave said, well, I'm not letting you go alone because I'm going to be there for him too.
Has this crime had an impact on your husband?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
I think sometimes he gets more angry than he used to, and I believe that part of that is because he doesn't have Matt. They were, even though he was a stepfather, they were close.
I've got two more photographs to show you, ma'am. 4709 and 4700. What does 4700 show?
That's Matt McQuinn. And it's a classic picture after he was an adult.
And 4709?
That is a classic Matt look.
I'm sorry, please continue.
He was probably around 24, 25 when that was taken, but it was a classic Matt.
Move to admit 4700 and 4709.
Nothing further.
All right, based on my previous rulings, including in order C-204, P-TR-4709 and 4700 are admitted and may be published.
If we could have 4700, ma'am, please. Tell us what we're looking at here.
That is Matt. That's probably about 24, 25 years old.
You said that was a classic look. What did you mean by that?
No, the other one is.
Oh, the other one is.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a look at the other one, 4709. And what are we looking at here, and why is that a classic look?
Because he was always smiling, and his eyes just had mischief in them.
Thank you, ma'am. You can take that down. I want to now talk about you and your relationship with your son. What kind of relationship did you have with Matt McQuinn?
We had a very close relationship. There was nothing that he wouldn't share with me. And he cared very deeply. One time when he was out in Colorado, I had to have surgery, and he called me about 3 or 4 times the day before just to make sure I was okay. And we just had a very, very close relationship.
Were you looking forward to him moving back to Ohio?
Yes.
I want to ask you now about your last memory of your son when he was alive. Can you tell us about that?
On July 19th, probably about, Colorado time, it was probably about 8:30
In the evening?
in the evening. And I called him to let him know that when he moved back to Ohio, he was more than welcome to come live with us. And he said no, he was going to live with Sam's parents because they were closer to where he was going to be working. And he told me that they were getting ready to go to the Batman movie that night. And it started at midnight, and he had to work at 4, but it's a 3-hour movie, so I'll just get an energy drink. I don't want to go to sleep so that, I risk sleeping through work. So he was real excited about it, and he said, Mom, I hear Nick coming home, so we're going to go get dinner before the movie, so I'm going to let you go. And I said, well, okay. I said, be careful. He said, oh, Mom, nothing's going to happen. And he said, I love you, Mom. And that was all.
That would have been around 10 in the evening, Ohio time?
Yes.
I want to go now to the time when you first heard about the shooting at the theater. When was that?
That was 4 o'clock. We were woken up about 4:20 in the morning by our son, Stephen.
Now that would be 4:20 Eastern time, is that right?
Correct.
So that's about
2:20
here. Okay.
And he said, there's a sheriff at the door.
Now, I want to ask you about this. Your son, Stephen, was he living with you?
Oh, yes.
And so this wasn't a phone call?
No.
What happened then? Did you get up and talk to the sheriff?
Yes. My husband and I got up and answered the door, and he said, do you know Matt McQuinn? And I said, yes. And he said, there's been an incident with the kids. You need to call Samantha's mom. And so we did. And she said, Jerry, she said, the kids went to a movie and somebody came in and started firing shots. And Samantha is at the hospital. She was shot in the knee. She's waiting for surgery, but we don't know where Matt is. They said that they couldn't tell Samantha anything about Matt because of the HIPAA laws.
Did you or your family at that point make any efforts to get additional information?
Yes. The sheriff stayed with us for about 45 minutes, and he was trying to call any law enforcement, his dispatch and Springfield Police, and we were trying to call Samantha, and we just couldn't get any kind of news.
When is the first time you got more news?
It was probably we got out to Denver probably about 1:30 Denver time.
So you just hopped on a plane?
Yes. Myself and Sam's mom, dad, and stepmom all ended up on the same plane. And we got, to the rental car, and we were on our way. I told them, let's go so you can be with Samantha. And they said, no, we're going to find Matt first. And my brother called while we were on the highway, and he said, Jerry, this doesn't look good. He said, I want a friend of mine to come be with you. And that was the first that I knew that there were 10 bodies still in the theater.
And did your brother have a friend in Denver that helped you?
Yes, she met me at Gateway.
When did you get official confirmation then?
It was about 8:30 Colorado time, which would have been 10:30 Ohio time. And so then they wanted, Sam's family wanted us to contact them by text or phone when we found anything out. And I told them no, we were going to go to the hospital and let them know in person.
Did you do that?
Yes, we did.
I think we had some testimony from a witness during the first part of this trial about not having any fingerprints for your son because Ohio doesn't take a thumbprint when you get a driver's license there. Were you asked to actually go and identify your son at the coroner's office?
Yes. We had to, we got a call that said that we needed to come down and identify him.
Did you do that?
I did.
Tell us about that.
Your Honor, I'd object 401, 403 due process.
Overruled.
I went in. The gentleman told me that Matt would be behind a glass window and that we would be in a little room. And so we went in, and my brother's friend and Samantha's stepmom went with me. And I went in, and he was there, and it was my son. And I had asked if he suffered, and they said that he was shot in the neck. And it was probably within seconds.
Did you say anything to him?
Your Honor, 401, 403 due process.
Overruled.
I told him that I loved him, that I was proud of him because he saved Samantha's life, and that we would take care of Samantha.
I only have a few more questions for you, ma'am.
Okay.
And I want to ask you about the service for your son. Where did that happen?
That happened at Main Lane Church of God in Springfield, where he had grown up.
Did anybody show up from your son's past that he had touched that you were surprised to see?
He had high school teachers that came. He had been in a class of just about 8 kids, and every one of them came. Childhood friends, friends from church, just all walks of life, like everybody that he had been in contact with, former co-workers. I think every aspect somebody was there.
What has been the impact of this crime on you?
I've been diagnosed with PTSD, with anxiety and depression. I went back to work for 2 weeks and could not handle it. And so I've been on...
Let me ask you that. What were you doing for a living back then?
I had been a claims analyst for 11 years for a trucking company. And it's a stressful job, and I just couldn't handle it. So I've been on Social Security disability, which has cut my income in half. I've been in counseling for almost 3 years now. And I'm on 4 medications to help me sleep from the nightmares.
I just have one more question for you.
Okay.
What is the most vivid memory that you have of your son?
The most thing that I think about, there's a lot of them, but probably the one that would describe him the best is he always wanted to be the center of attention. He wanted to be the one that was proposed to. He wanted to be the one that had the big old diamond ring. And he told his grandma that he was going to dance down the aisle
At a wedding?
at his wedding, and that was, I believe, the reason why he had his man tiara.
And did he ever get a chance to do any of that?
No, he did not.
Thank you, ma'am. I don't have anything further, Your Honor.
All right, any questions?
No, sir.
And the jury does not appear to have any questions. May Ms. Jackson be released from her subpoena? Yes. Any objection?
No, sir.
All right, Mrs. Jackson, thank you. Members of the jury, it's almost 10:20, so it's time for our morning break. I want to remind you that you may not be swayed by emotion. Your decisions in this sentencing hearing may not be the result of any irrational or arbitrary emotional response. Rather, each of your final sentencing verdicts must reflect your individual reasoned moral judgment. Please keep all my advisements in mind during the break. They all apply, and I'll see you back here in 20 minutes, okay? Thank you. The record should reflect that the jury has exited the courtroom. Let's go ahead and take our morning break, and then I'll see everyone back here in 20 minutes. The court will be in recess. Thank you.